Well, howdy, folks. Back here again. Going to do another collection video because I recently got a request from somebody on YouTube. One Clayton Condo. He asked if I could do a collection video on the Criterion Collection. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So, I'm going to show you my Criterions. What I've picked up over the years. Haven't been collecting the Criterions all that long. I did this video quite some time ago, but I figured I'd better do another one because I had since picked up a lot more films on Blu-ray and so forth. So it's time to do an update on that. And plus, one thing I want to specify about the Criterion Collection is that this is a specific home video line of Blu-rays and DVDs of movies that they're honored for their specific filmmaking reasons. And there are some people out there that think Criterion picks these films because of popularity or things like that. But as you'll see as we get into and what I have, a lot of these films were not box office hits. They were not necessarily popular at the time. They've gained a huge following, but because of their filmmaking status. And I'll point that out as soon as we get into it. So without further ado, let's take a look at what I have acquired of the Criterion Collection. Got about 4 piles here of Blu-rays. First of all, before I show you these, I want to take a look at right here on the back of, if I can get my camera to focus on what that says. It says the Criterion Collection, a continuing series of important classic and contemporary films. So, yeah, these are what they deem to be important films in society. So the first one up we have here is 12 Angry Men, starring Henry Fonda and several other players. You got Ed Begley, Lee J. Cobb, E.G. Marshall, Jack Ward, Martin Balsam, John Felder, Jack Klugman, Edward Binns, Joseph Sweeney, and so on and so forth. And this was directed by Sidney Lumet. Yeah, great movie, great courtroom drama. And like I said, Criterion doesn't necessarily go by popularity. This is one of those films that actually failed at the box office, but did in later years find its audience. Another thing that Criterion was known for is the artwork on the covers and this right here. They usually come with a booklet giving essays about the entire movie and about the making of the movie. Essentially, the Criterion Collection is a film class in a box, is what they've basically given the name of the Criterion Collection. I've heard that before. But yeah, here's 12 Angry Men. And of course, also the spine number. Let me focus in on that. See, this is spine number 591. And all the spines look like that. You can see there. I kind of knocked a few over. But I kind of want to keep these in order because they are in alphabetical order on my shelf. The next one, we got 3:10 to Yuma. I believe it's Delmer Daves, the director, starring Van Heflin and Glenn Ford. And it all depends on which studio who has the rights to these movies. You know, if they want to release these films. And of course, if you'll notice that not all films are in surround sound, like this has a DTS HD master audio track, and this one doesn't. This one just plain PCM. So yeah, we got 3:10 to Yuma. 400 Blows, directed by Francois Truffaut. And there's some great features on there. Of course, I forgot to show you the other one. Gives little essays and stuff about information about the film. And I'll back here to 3:10 to Yuma. It's hard to do this one hand. And there's usually some artwork or a picture on the other side of the disc. And then some of them are in boxes like this. This is Billy Wilder's Ace in the Hole, starring Kirk Douglas. Now this one pulls out, and then there's a picture on the back of what takes place in the film. Now some of these discs are both DVD and Blu-ray combos. That is something that Criterion just started doing within the last couple years. But Ace in the Hole here, that one's kind of interesting. You notice that there is no booklet with this, but however it comes with this. And this is basically all the essays that were written in a newspaper form. So it's an interesting, sometimes they do interesting designs with these films. Next up is Bob Fosse's All That Jazz, starring Roy Scheider. Yeah. Yeah, let's go backwards when forward fails. And that also has pictures and stuff like that. See, there's the Blu-ray, and then there's the DVD. And there's also a DVD of supplements. They give you an option to watch the film on DVD and the bonus content. And as you can see, there are tons of bonus content listed for each film. And a little information about the transfer that they use. Now this one here, this one tends to be the granddaddy that everybody wants. I would recommend that you only get this when it's on sale. Like if Barnes & Noble's having the 50% off sale, that would be the perfect time to get it, because this is an expensive set. I've seen it range from $80 to $130. So yeah, this is called America Lost and Found: The BBS Story, which includes Head, Easy Rider, 5 Easy Pieces, Drive, He Said, A Safe Place, The Last Picture Show, and The King of Marvin Gardens. And they all come. So here's with this. It's not a huge book, but it's a decent sized little book about the whole BBS production company. that was in the 60s and early 70s. So I'm gonna just pour all these out because they come in little cardboard sleeves or little cardboard cases. These have been released individually. Some of these, like here's the King of Marvin Gardens, The Last Picture Show by Peter Bogdanovich, Drive, He Said, In a Safe Place are all on the same Blu-ray. They just put them together to, I guess, to conserve the disc space. Plus, well, yeah, they're both around 90 minutes, so yeah, there you go. 5 Easy Pieces, directed by Bob Rafelson. Now this one I know has been released on an individual release, as well as Easy Rider, you know, the classic film from the 60s, you know, with Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda. Here's Head, film with the monkeys, directed by Bob Rafelson. Just a crazy movie. Anatomy of a Murder, directed by Otto Preminger, with James Stewart, Lee Remick, and so on and so forth. I can't pronounce some of those names. Here's Badlands, directed by Terrence Malick, starring Sissy Spacek and Martin Sheen. The Black Stallion. This is one I'm just crazy about that Criterion picked this up. This one was definitely needed to be on their list. Just how gorgeous the filmmaking is. Directed by Carol Ballard, starring Hoyt Axton, Kelly Renault, Terry Garr, Mickey Rooney. Screenplay by Melissa Matheson and Bill Whitliff. And we got John Travolta, Nancy Allen, and Brian De Palma's Blowout, which is a good thriller about you know, John Travolta's this sound designer for a B movie company, you know, making little cheap horror films and stuff like that, and he captures an assassination on his tape recorder, recording sounds. It's fantastic. Okay, moving on to the next pile. This is probably one of the most famous or more readily available Criterions. I mean, you can get this one pretty cheap. And it's the Curious Case of Benjamin Button with Brad Pitt, Cate Blanchett, directed by David Fincher. I mean, this one was pretty much Criterion upon its home video release. That's the only way it was released on Blu-ray, was through Criterion. You could also get a DVD version of that as well. Next up is Francois Truffaut's Day for Night. Oh, I forgot to show Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Yeah, it's a 2-disc set. And there's some essays in there about the making of the film. And like I said, Francois Truffaut's Day for Night. Yeah. It's what's involved with that. Now this is one that is probably more of a, you know, where Criterion picked up a fairly popular film, and you know, it has a huge cult following to it. It's Richard Linklater's Dazed and Confused. So, yeah, and this one just has a slide out cover. There's a poster in here. Here's the booklet that goes with, and this is a fairly thick one too. And it's just a 1-disc Blu-ray. Now let's take a look at this poster if I can unfold it one-handed. Now this was a poster that was, I think, was a teaser poster or something like that when they were campaigning to get the film made. But yeah, if not, Criterion made this through their art department. And there's the back. And we'll try to put it back in the box one-handed. Some of the stuff is tricky to do with one hand, to put it back. Next we got Fanny and Alexander, Ingmar Bergman's Fanny and Alexander, and it has 2 different versions of the movie. It has the TV version and the theatrical release version, and it's quite a significant difference in time, believe it or not. And then there's a whole making of documentary on here. That, matter of fact, it's so big of a movie that I think it takes 3 discs. I think, yeah. And there's the booklet. Again, I gotta try to, this next one, the same thing's gonna happen. Try to put it back with one hand. There we go. Wes Anderson's The Fantastic Mr. Fox. His stop motion. Sorry, the back got a little torn up being put on the shelf. A little bit of force, which I should know better than doing. And this is I believe a Blu-ray and DVD special edition. There's the DVD, and there's the Blu-ray. And you got the booklet with the essays and so forth. Come on. Like I said, some of these are very tricky to put away with one hand, especially. And then we got Terry Gilliam's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas with Johnny Depp, Benicio del Toro, and there's several other people that make appearances in this film, based on the book by Hunter S. Thompson. There you go. And we have the, I believe this was the feature film debut of Christopher Nolan, called Following. And this is a film, I think one of his first films, if not his first film entirely. Like he shot it over weekends and times they had off and from schooling and all that, so, and work, and so, yeah. There you go. And then there's Godzilla, the classic film Godzilla. Now this also features, as it was known as Gojira when it was translated here as Godzilla. However, this has both versions. This has the original Japanese film, and it has a new edition of Godzilla King of the Monsters. And this is the outside. We open it up and we get that. Godzilla himself pops out. And here's the booklet. And then there's the Blu-ray. I'll put that off to the side. That one's going to be a little bit more harder to get. And here's Gamora, an Italian film based on, I'm trying to think, it's a huge depiction of organized crime going on in Italy, and women and children caught up in the whole mess. Now, this is just a regular Blu-ray edition. I was able to find at a Movies You Buy the DVD edition for like $1.50. So a lot of people don't realize what they're getting into when they talk about Criterions. But yeah, there's Gamora. We have Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator. And then there you go. Now this one, another one I was proud that Criterion picked up. I kind of hope they do the other Beatles films or some of the others. But here's A Hard Day's Night, directed by Richard Lester. Awesome edition. Has both the Blu-ray and the DVD in it. Has this huge book in it. I mean, look at that. Just essays and information about the making of the film, and it's on a 2-disc DVD, 1-disc Blu-ray. So let's set that. We got Harold and Maude, directed by Hal Ashby. Bud Cort and Ruth Gordon are the stars. Just a strange movie from the early 70s with music by Cat Stevens. Film was kind of a modest hit. It would pick up years later, I guess, in popularity. And then this is one that kind of surprises people why it's on Criterion. It's Michael Cimino's Heaven's Gate. In case you don't know the history about this film, this is actually the biggest box office bomb in film history. It was notoriously known for going way over budget, way over schedule, and costing United Artists about $40 million to produce, and only made back a few million. And it was so bad that it cost the studio to go or basically to close the stores, and it was sold to MGM soon after. It was released in 1980, 79, 80. MGM, about a year, around 81, would sell off to, United Artists would sell off in about 81 to MGM. And so, United Artists was a big studio at the time. But to have a film that comes along and just wipes out the entire studio, that is still being felt today. That is why it's so crucial that films that studios only want to make or want to spend so much money on a film, because they don't want to run into a problem like with Heaven's Gate. Next, we got Hoop Dreams, film by Steve James. As a matter of fact, this was one of Roger Ebert's favorite movies, so much that he hired the director to do the Roger Ebert documentary Life Itself with him. And there you go. And then there's the Kennedy films of Robert Drew and Associates. And now there are 4 films here. Now these are fairly short films. I mean, they're about an hour in length. I mean, 3 of the films are about an hour in length. 1 is only 12 minutes. And we got Primary, Adventures on the New Frontier, Crisis, and The Faces of November. Primary focuses on Kennedy seeking for election. Adventures on the New Frontier is when he took over the Oval Office, took the White House and all that. Crisis about the Cuban Missile Crisis, obviously. And Faces of November is basically footage from Kennedy's funeral. And they were all produced by Robert Drew. Next up, we got Charlie Chaplin's The Kid. Classic film out of Chaplin. There he is as the character, the Tramp. Next, we got the French film The Kid with the Bike. Very decent movie. Very troubling movie, actually. It's a very, very sad story, actually. So this is another thing that Criterion has helped to do, is help bring foreign films to an American audience. Now, downside is the Criterion Collection, they're not that cheap. This is about, at minimum, $30. If you go to Barnes & Noble, a regular price is $40. So, yeah, that's a downside to them. Next is The Lord of the Flies, the original one, directed by Peter Brook. And then I had to split this pile into 2. We got Leo McCarey's Make Way for Tomorrow. Very sad and depressing film, even though it was directed by a director that's usually a comedic director at the time. But, yeah, that one was kind of a downbeat on his resume. We got Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times. Yeah, and he was the Tramp in this one, too. John Ford's My Darling Clementine, with starring Henry Fonda. Now, I got this one because I've been a big fan of the show MASH. This movie was featured in the show MASH. when they are bored to death, they can't find anything to do, and so the colonel rents a movie from the military, as they had access to Hollywood films. So he rents My Darling Clementine, and the film print is so bad that they have, when the film breaks down, they have to come up with ways to entertain themselves. Now we move on to Nashville, Robert Altman's Nashville. Now this is one that's in these boxes. And this is both DVD and Blu-ray. Set that off to the side. Same with Night of the Hunter. They've since come out with a clear case version like this for Night of the Hunter. This is probably one of my favorite Criterions, because this is a 2-disc Blu-ray containing the original. Sorry, my phone card just was full of memory. Had to dump it out. Like I said, this is one of my favorite Criterion Collection discs, because it contains in this the original film, again, which was a box office bomb at the time, but has since gained in popularity. So we have the movie on disc 1. We have Love and, if you know the movie, Love and Hate. But on disc 2 we have this huge documentary called Charles Laughton Directs The Night of the Hunter, which is all about the making of the film and how Charles Laughton ended up directing what is now a classic film. And next up we got A Night to Remember. Yeah, and you see a lot of similarities between this and James Cameron's Titanic if you watch this, because it's the same story. But I think Cameron pulled a lot of scenes like right out of this movie. Next up we got Marlon Brando's On the Waterfront, directed by Elia Kazan. Classic movie. And like Night of the Hunter, it has the movie on one disc, and now the second disc has a making of film. It's kind of, I think it's kind of an alternate cut. I forget what it is. It's not a documentary. It's an alternate presentations of the restoration with 2 different aspect ratios. So it's like an alternate version. We got Paris, Texas, directed by Wim Wenders, starring Harry Dean Stanton, Hunter Carson, Dean Stockwell's also in this. Yeah. We got Paths of Glory, directed by Stanley Kubrick, starring Kirk Douglas. And then here's Howard Hawks' Red River, starring John Wayne and Montgomery Clift. Now this is a big one, because in this it has like the typical Criterion, you know, 2-disc Blu-ray, 2-disc DVD with the essays, but also it contains the original book in which this movie was based on. So yeah, there's Red River. And we got Riot in Cell Block 11, directed by Don Siegel. Byron Haskins' Robinson Crusoe on Mars. We got Mark Rydell's and starring Bette Midler's The Rose, which was supposed to be the Janis Joplin story, but they couldn't get it through Janis Joplin's estate to do a straight up story, so they ended up creating a Janis Joplin-like character. And we got David Cronenberg's Scanners. Of course, it's DVD and Blu-ray. There's a bunch of essays and some fairly horrific, like everyone knows that's just disturbing. Okay, now we're going on to the last pile. We got Akira Kurosawa's The Seven Samurai. Classic film from him. Now this film was later remade as The Magnificent Seven and Battle Beyond the Stars. So that's how influential this film was, you know, especially to American directors. Next up is Solaris. This is the original Russian film, not the crappy American remake with George Clooney. Tarkovsky. Now we got John Ford's Stagecoach. This is the film that made John Wayne a star. Even though John Wayne was not the main actor in this film, he was. This is the film that got him notoriety as a big movie star. Then we got Burt Lancaster, Tony Curtis, Sweet Smell of Success. Classic film. Of course, here's the booklet. And there's the disc. You got Michael Mann and James Caan in Thief. Produced by Jerry Bruckheimer. The Thin Red Line, directed by Terrence Malick, with an all-star cast. Of course, this was in the Military Collection video. Now, this film is quite controversial. Matter of fact, if you live in Oklahoma, you will not be allowed to so much as watch this movie, called The Tin Drum. There's some very controversial things in the film. Most of it having to do with a child, but it's just crazy. Now, this is a case where, another case where popular films are seeking a Criterion release. We have Tootsie, directed by Sidney Pollack, starring Dustin Hoffman. This classic comedy. We also have Traffic, an Academy Award-winning film, directed by Steven Soderbergh. Again, all-star cast, I think. Oh yeah, you got Don Cheadle, Benicio del Toro, Michael Douglas, Dennis Quaid, Catherine Zeta-Jones. Yeah. Two-Lane Blacktop, directed by Monty Hellman, starring Warren Oates and James Taylor, Dennis Wilson from the Beach Boys. It's the only time that they would act in a film. We got David Cronenberg's Videodrome. This came out at a time when home video was fairly brand new, and so yeah, there you go with the quote from the film, "Long live the new flesh." And of course, the shape of the artwork on this case is of a videotape. Now, this tape is actually a beta tape, is what they were using in the film. And beta was died out in the 80s in terms of consumer use. It stayed around a while in the 90s. But yeah, it was this Videodrome, starring James Woods and Deborah Harry, with makeup effects by, special effects by Rick Baker, who retired just a few years ago, unfortunately. And then there's Martin Rosen's Watership Down, animated film from the 1970s, 78. And this is a film that somehow gets deemed as a family film just because of the fact that it is animated. But here's something to look at, that this is a very violent film. You can see on this artwork, and this was actually taken from the poster, that rabbit is in a trap. So, yeah. And then finally, I have Yojimbo and Sanjuro, which were sequels, or not sequels, but the one was a sequel to the other. And here's Yojimbo. So there you have it. Make sure my focus is. So there you have it. There's all the Criterion Blu-rays that I have. Got quite a few of them. And so it's, these are some very good films. Mostly, you look at them from the filmmaking perspective. That's why Criterion is around. Now, I don't know why Armageddon or The Rock was on the label at one point, but who knows what their thinking was. Maybe because of popularity, I do not know. But yeah, this is the Criterion Collection. You know, it's for people that are film buffs and want to know a little bit more about the making of movies. So, from me to you, see you later.